It allows us to build forms to capture any business-specific data you have, whether it be something that relates to GP or not. It runs within GP, but we can capture any sort of data we want, and we'll kind of show you how that works today. Then we can also trigger logic events as you move around. Extender Enterprise, which there are two versions of Extender, one being Standard, one being Enterprise. Standard gives us the basic operations. Enterprise adds on all the logic to it. So what the logic allows us to do is, as I do this, Extender will automatically do something else. So say I'm tracking some data, I click a button on my Extender window, it automatically creates a sales transaction for me based on the data I just collected. There's a lot of different things you can do there, just opening windows. You can actually have it create transactions. You can have it run SQL scripts, whatever you might want to do, and that's where the enterprise adds on all that logic. And so with that, it can be custom logic. It can be some of the basic logic we've already built, because we've built a lot of it in so that you don't have to be able to write any code. It's selecting, okay, I want it to open a window, open this window. And that's all you have to do to get that to run. But you can also, if you know how to write code, go in there and write some additional code, but it's not necessary to a lot of the different functions. So with that, that's the end of my slide. So let's take a look at a demo of Extender. And so this is GP 2013, and I have Extender 2013 on here. So Extender goes right below Smart. So there, if you're familiar with that one, on our Tools menu. And when you open it, to start, you're not going to have anything in here. It's going to be completely empty, but I've built a bunch of different solutions kind of for examples here. So what we do is we build a solution that is maybe called a mini application, if you want to call it that, or it's a grouping of different Extender resources that do a specific function. So you can see I have some, I have a bunch of shortcuts created, so I just have one for shortcuts. I have one for notes. I have one to track my hardware. So it's all the different things I want to track, and I've created different solutions just to kind of keep my resources separate so I don't get confused. In 2010, if you're still on that, or 10.0 even, you would see it as just a big list. If we don't have solutions there, so that's one of the nice features we added in 2013, to kind of organize everything you're setting up. So what I've done is created one for the gym. It's kind of a generic one. Figured everybody would kind of understand a gym membership. And when we do that, it creates all these different resource types. So we have windows, views, menus, lookups, imports, forms, and actions. And I'll kind of go through those. The two main ones are windows and forms. A window links to GP data and actually is opened from a GP window or any other product you might have loaded in GP, so whether it be manufacturing, human resources, anything like that, a window opens from one of those products' windows. A form, on the other hand, is completely independent of GP data. You open it independently. You don't have to open a GP window to get to the form. So that's the big difference there, is where do you want the window to open from as to which type you're going to create. So first, I've done a couple of windows just to kind of give you an idea here of what we can do. So what I did is created on my customer maintenance window is a bunch of different stuff. So you see, today when you open your customer maintenance window, it just opens the customer maintenance window. You don't have the ID put in here. Nothing is in here. What I've done with Extender is that it's auto-populate a customer ID. I've actually created a membership window so that when I create a new customer, I'll create them as a member as well. And I've told people to remember to offer them a 5% discount up front. Now I had all these opening automatically. I can open them off the different fields. They're all opening based on the name field. So if I go back to the main customer maintenance window, I can enter in this new customer, go through all of that. I can go back and open that membership window again if I wanted to. And here it is. I can say, okay, today they bought a family membership. And it starts tomorrow. And it automatically told me it was $75. I say, ooh, it's an adult one. student one, it's not changing now. It only sets it by default on the first one, but I did have it based on different criteria set that $75 for me. So I can have that automatically change all the time. I had it change once. Up to you how you want all that to fly. But we can do different logic like that with Extender, and I didn't write any code with that. I'll show you the setup for it in a second here. I also added a membership notes window. So a very simple window is just notes, but if I were to use this notes here, the standard GP one, I can enter in one note. And I can keep entering onto it, but it's one note. If I use Extender notes, I actually can create note types. So I can say this is a discount note. Well, let's say they were given 4% for 9 months. I have a note now. Well, I want another one. I have one on miscellaneous. And I can just keep going at tracking who's entering it. If I want a note type, the type is being selected, the date, the time, and then the actual note. So I can have multiple notes instead of just one note. So even if you aren't using this all for a specific action, a lot of people will come in here and create a customer note window, a vendor note window, an item note window, just all the different note windows, and use those instead of the standard GP note because they can track hundreds of notes instead of one. So that's something nice Extender can do for you. Now when I look at all of this, this was a very simple window. So what is the setup behind it? If I go back to Extender, that is this one. And you can see I've just set it, he uses the customer maintenance window. The key on that window is customer number. In 2013 actually told me the key is that. So I didn't even have to figure it out. And then I entered my different fields. And when you do this, all you have to do is enter what your prompt should be, so your label for that field, and then what type of field it is, what data type is going to be in there. And you can see there's a lot of different types, checkboxes, email addresses, lookups that look up similar to a GP lookup where I can say look up the employee, and it brings up the employee lookup window on my window, numbers, phone numbers, whatever you might want it to be. So that's giving me those fields. Then I just set up templates saying, hey, if I pick adult fee, it's $50. If I pick student, it's $40. So that's where that dollar amount was coming from. And I created an action, which is our run something, or do an action. And I said, when the membership type changes, run those templates, I said. So when it changes to adult, run the template for adult. So that's all it's doing is running the templates I've set up for dollar amounts. So it's a pretty basic setup, and it opens from my customer maintenance window. Another totally different option for the same theory is to go with a form. Maybe I don't want it on my customer maintenance window. Maybe I wanted it completely independent. So I created a form with the same information on it. On a form you can have 2 columns, so I put it into multiple columns here. And then I've put the templates on here. I've put that action on here and done all of that. I'm going to use this form just to show you because it's not on a GP window. I don't have to open a GP window to get to it. So I can use it independently. So now I have member ID instead of pulling in that customer ID, but it actually looks up back to the customers because that's how I've set that field to do that. And then I can enter in a member name, and if you use the actions that are in Enterprise, you can actually write some code to pull in the customer name based on the member ID that you pick, if you'd like. But again, I pick adult. Now it said it's $50. And you can see it's basically the same, but with a form, I can actually add a bunch of buttons here as well. So without writing any code, there's no code written on any of this stuff I've done today. Let me clear that first. We already had the window open. I can click Customer, and it actually pulls up Aaron Fitz's record. I can click Notes. It opens a note window. Now, it's not the same note window I had on the other one because that was based on the customer maintenance window in GP. This is actually based on my form. So they're two different notes, so I'm not pulling in those. I actually can have it open the cash receipts entry window, so when they do pay their membership dues, it opens it, it populates the customer ID, puts in their actual membership fee amount, and then is waiting for me to do what I need to do on this. I can post it, I can change the checkbook, whatever I need to do. And I can actually have other forms open directly from these buttons. So this is another form that I have set to track their activities. And I can say they did that, and it's a detail form, so I can track as many as I want. So with a form, we have a little bit more availability to do things like creating buttons and that type of thing, just because it's not based on a GP window. But you can see with this activity one, I'm opening up this window, or this form. That's actually a form right here that I can open up independently as well. So that those two records I entered for Aaron, I can open those up without going to that other form. I've just created a button that goes to that form. So let's take a look at, that's a couple different options. So when you're deciding here, do I want it to open from GP and I can enter my membership there, or do I want it to open up independently of a GP window and I can enter my membership there? That's kind of the decisions you need to make when you start building, and you can do both and decide. It's just if you enter data in one, it's not going to show up in the other when you go to use the other one. You kind of need to decide before you release it to a live environment. But maybe set up both, see which one works better for you. The thing I want to show you now is menus. Because those forms are independent of any sort of GP window, I can open them from within Extender, but as a standard user, we don't want them to have to come in an Extender and open it up all the time. So there's the ability to create menus here. You select which menu group you want it on, and then you can add whatever windows you want. Here I've added a bunch of the different forms that we have, but you can add any GP window. On 2013, on 2010, it's just Extender resources, but on 2013, it's any GP window or Extender resource. So I could say add the customer maintenance window if I wanted to. That would be on my menu. Now, when you edit your menu or when you create one, you actually have to relaunch GP. Right now, I just have those 5 here because I didn't save it here, but I would have to relaunch GP to get back customer maintenance onto it. But you can see I've told it to go under cards, and I told it to call it membership. So it's created its own menu, looks just like any other GP menu, and I can open those same windows. Got it open. That same window that I had there, or the activity one. So that's how an end user would use a form. The windows, of course, opening from a GP window. The other thing you can do on a form is create what we call navigation. So I have this form that has their training classes at the gym set up, and I can actually create a navigation list based on that. And this one's actually going to be a calendar, and I can click on a class ID or date, and it'll show me the classes on that date. So if I go back here, this is a navigation list, so I don't have any data here, but I can click on a date, and it would show me the class IDs. It can do all of that. So what I want to do is actually build one from scratch now so you can see how long it took me to build something like this. So we're going to create a new solution, and we'll just call it training. And what we're going to do is build a training class form for, say we do internal training all the time, we need to make sure we're tracking who's attending, who's the trainer, when is it, and all of that information. So we're just going to create a form. Close the window. Okay. So a new form, and all we have to do is give it an ID, and this ID is just this one. It's just an internal ID to extender, so it really has no bearing on what we're doing. And then the training class, the form name here, is what actually the window gets called. My ID field prompt is what is my unique key on this. We'll go with the class ID. And then what do you want your description to be? We'll go with class description. And now what I can do with this class ID, if I want to, I can use an existing lookup, so I can have it look up to an item, salesperson, whatever I might want it to go to. It doesn't really make sense for this one. I'm going to actually have it auto-increment as an ID. We'll call it TC. We'll do something like that. And now it's going to just increment 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as we go. So that's my header information on the form. Now I just need to enter what fields I actually want to track. Well, the first thing I need is a trainer. And that one they're internal people, so they're an employee in my system. I'm going to do a lookup to the employee. And let's see, we need the date of that class, so we're just going to do a date field. And maybe a start time and end time. So those will be time fields. Okay, so now that I have that, let's just see what it looks like. So here's my form. There's no classes yet. But if I click in there, I do get that TC0001. We'll call this new employee orientation, we'll say. And we'll say that Kathy is our trainer. And that was a lookup back to, if you're familiar with the Fabricam employees, back to those, because I selected employee. Now it's just a date, and like any date built in GP, I get the calendar and the time. As you're entering this, you can see there's no AM, PM. It is entered in military time, but it displays in regular time. So if I enter 2 o'clock, it's 2 a.m., so 1400. Tell me I have to enter that. So I'll save that. And now you can see it goes to 2. So that's our basic form. But, so that just tells me the training classes. I need to know who's going to be, or be able to sign people up for them as well. So I'm going to create a detail portion for that window because I can sign up multiple people for a single class. So I'm just going to turn on the scrolling grid and just put another field called attendees, and I'm going to look up to employees because these are also internal people. So I'm going to look up to employee, and that's all I want there. So now if I show you that, I now have this bottom section, so if I pull up that same class, I can now enter people who are going to be in the class. Oops. So with those two people, and you can see, because it is a lookup, it actually gives you the drill back functionality back to the employee maintenance because that's the lookup it is. So it's automatically adding that functionality to drill back just as GP would. So that gave me my detail. Now I have my class, the trainer, the attendees, all of that. Let's just look at some of the other features I can do on here. If you want to, you can actually make your window read-only. That's the other feature in there. And then there's options for multi-currency if you're using that. We don't have any currency fields on ours, so we don't really need to worry about that. But let's look at the extra windows. I want to add a notes button to this window. That's what we call extra windows. So what do I want my prompt to be? We'll just call it class notes. And I want it to be a note list. And what do I want on my types? We'll just do attendee, trainer, and other. Okay, so now I have a note window. If I look at that, you do have to have a record pulled up. Just like that, I have a list where I can enter notes. And if I look at this, let's go further. Template, I don't need this to do anything right now. Let's create one of those navigation lists. This is a class. I want a calendar. We'll go add, and we'll call this, oh, I can't type today, training calendar. And I'm going to do a calendar type, and then I got to tell it what search fields do I want. You have to have a date field on there, obviously for the calendar to know what field to pull that off. Then we're going to do it by class ID. And what do I want to display? We'll just do them all. There's other options in here. What actions do you want? Do you want to be able to export to Excel, delete from the list, anything like that? If you have drop-down lists, you can say, based on this value, make it red. Based on this value, make it blue. So if we had a class type or something like that on there, we could do that. If you want some restrictions on this, you can do that. And let's preview this. So here we have the 12 selected. That's where I've entered one. Where did I actually enter the record? 6/13/2013. Okay. We go back to 6/13. And now if I click on the 13th, I can actually see the classes that are here. If I enter another one, we'll do the same date. Now you can see I have TCO1, TCO2. If I click on O2, it's showing me that information. So just depending on how you want to set this up, you know, I could have trainers here, so I could see. I click on Kathy as a trainer, and it would show me all the classes she had. However you want to set this up. And you can see it's kind of a nice little thing, so I can see what's going on each day based on the calendar we have set up. The other option I have here is to add to SmartList. And I can add details to SmartList as well. You might want to call them two different things. Save that. I launch SmartList. I'm going to get this extender one. And I've done this multiple times, so that's why I have multiple ones there. But you can see here's the data I just entered for the training classes. There's the one I entered just now for those attendees that we selected. And there isn't much difference between them other than this one I do get the attendee list. as easy as clicking a checkbox, you automatically get a smart list of that data. You can use Smart List Builder to add data. You can, if you want it on a GP report, we can add extender data through Report Writer. Or if you're using an outside reporting app, maybe you're using SRS, you're using Crystal Reports, maybe you pull data directly to Excel, wherever you might do, Extender has another option called Views, where we can actually create a view, which is just a SQL view, so that you can pull that data into any other application. So we'll call this training. Let's call it view, but it's too long of a name, so that'll work. We'll call it training class view, and then you have to give it a SQL name. I usually put ext in front of it because it is Extender, so that I know where that view came from. And now I can just add whatever I want to from it. You can add GP tables, so I could create a view from any GP tables. So this is a nice way to create a lot of views. You don't even have to do it through SQL. You can do it using Extender. Or I can pull it from cash flow if I want to, whatever you might want there. Otherwise, I can pull in a window or a form. So if I pick a form, I go to my training classes and add. Now it says, okay, here's the fields you have on that form. Which ones do you want? So I'm going to say mark all. I can preview that view, and it shows me what the view is actually going to pull. There's options if you don't want it to use the nice names. So it would have like field 1, field 2 type of values instead of class description, class ID. And then how do you want to save the list and checkboxes. So they're there as well. So if I save this, now I've just created a view in SQL that I can use anywhere I need to in a report. It hasn't given everyone permission to the view or anything like that. Basically, anybody who's a sysadmin just got access to that view. That's about it. So you need to worry about those permissions after the fact as well. So we can create those views to use elsewhere. Extender does have an import option to import data. So if you've been doing something in Excel for 5 years, you have all this data, but you create an Extender window, now you want to import that data into that instead. Extender does have an import option. It's pretty basic. It says pick the file and tell me, okay, here's the fields on the window you tell me you want to import into. In your file, which field is field number 1, which one's 2, which one's 3. Basically, if you think about it, if you're pulling from an Excel file, column A would be 1, column B would be 2, column C would be 3, and you kind of go down the list like that. There's no real logic to any of this import. It's a straight import. You can do it from a comma delimited, tab delimited, Excel, or fixed width. Pretty basic. We do have nodes built into our Smart Connect application that is an import utility that allows us to do a little bit more logic and pulling in a little bit more detailed width into Extender. So if you're looking for basic, this will do it. If you need more detail and be able to tweak the data a little bit more, we'd have to go to Smart Connect to be able to import into Extender. Okay, so I want to show you some different things just to get you thinking. You know, I've shown you how to make a gym application and the training application, but what other kinds of things might you be able to do, or might you even think about doing with Extender, just to get your mind rolling on all the different things? Because we get a lot of people, I want to do this one thing. Well, after you've done that one thing, think of all the other things we can have it do for you to make your life easier. So a couple of the different ones I have, and you saw it do it once. I have one for default batches. It's just a bunch of actions that automatically when I open different transaction windows, it's creating a batch ID with the user ID and then the date of the system. It's kind of a different date because I am in Fabricam, but that's all it does. So, but I have it doing it for a sales transaction, an RM transaction, PM, manual payments, item transactions, all the different items or different types of transactions that I do on a daily basis. So that's something I could do with Extender. Now you're going, okay, can she do that with just default Extender, no code? This one does have some code behind it. So not too long of code, but it does have some code. But we're actually looking at releasing some of these as templates, so you don't even have to write the code. Or if you can kind of figure out code, but you can't write it from scratch, you know, if we release a couple, can you take it and look at it and tweak it to work? A lot of them you can. You know, this is for RM cash, so I go, okay, what's the PM transaction entry? Maybe I can change it to do that. It is dexterity code that it's written in, so that is something you would have to know to do that. But think of it on the lines of we're always here to write that code for you as well, or a partner might be able to write that code for you to do that type of stuff. So don't worry if you don't know how to write that code. We can help out with that. So that's one scenario. You know, that way I keep my batch consistent. This one just creates shortcuts on different windows. So on the draw my stuff fires here. I just have shortcuts for create a sales order and a transaction inquiry. So straight from the customer maintenance window, if I populate it with a customer, I have it opening the sales transaction entry window and putting that customer ID in there. So that's some basic thing I can do just to make life easier of a navigation standing. This one actually just populates my customer IDs. You may have seen my customer ID. It was always going to 000, a bunch of zeros, 1. I can do that to my employee ID, and it just increments 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if you don't want to have people trying to create unique customer IDs or employee IDs, whatever it might be. Some people want just a numeric number that increments. So we can do that kind of thing. As I said earlier, some people will come in and just create a bunch of note windows. So just put one on the customer, one on the employee, one on the item, salesperson, the vendor, wherever they might want it. And that's all it is. It's just a note window so that they can track 50 different notes instead of just one. What else do I have? Oh, this one. This one actually checks. It's a little bit more in depth. Checks for duplicate PO numbers. So on the sales transaction entry, it's actually checking history to make sure that this customer PO number doesn't already exist in history. So whenever I tab off of this, it goes to the history table and says, hey, for breakthrough, does customer PO number A already exist? Nope. Okay, I'll allow it. If it does exist, it actually tells me it exists and I can't use it. So it's just checking it. Because I need this field to be unique for something I'm doing, I can set up Extender to actually check that and make sure it's unique. So if we look at some of the different, if we go back to our gym one, I just want to show you some of the different actions you can actually do, because entering fields is what we can do with the standard. I can have it collect all the data I want. I want to show you what the difference is now between standard and Extender, or enterprise. So if I go to add here, these are actions, the logic. Think of it that way. What can I make this do with that data? With standard, you get these top 4 options, and you also get the macro and the dialog. So with enterprise, basically you get everything here, but anything below here other than dialog and macros is new with enterprise then. So you can have it open just a standard extender form. Maybe from a window I want to have it open a form. I can do that type of thing. And when I'm doing that, in 2010 you used to have to write code to do this. Now in 2013 we're doing it. All you have to tell us is, okay, I want to open this one. And if you want to set some data in there, you can say, set the field ID based on this field from the window I'm pulling it open from. So I can pass data to the new form I'm opening. You can have it close extender form so that when you tab into a certain field, however you're setting this up, when I change a field, whatever, it automatically closes the form so that I don't even have to hit the save or the close button. You can have it open GP forms, so similar to how I had it open that cash receipts window and enter in data. I can do that from anywhere with an action. Again, before you had to write code to have it do that. Now it just automatically does it for you. You can actually have it open other applications. Maybe you wanted to open Notepad, you wanted to open Word, something like that. You can actually have it do that when you hit certain criteria. So on this scenario, when I change the member name, it would open whatever application I tell it to. Display dialogues is that message I was getting that says offer them a discount. That's a dialogue. So I can have it just pop up reminders to people. Hey, remember to tell them this, if they're on the phone, or here's a special we're running this month. Remember to mention it. And then you can turn it off if you want to after the month. You can do little dialogues. You can actually ask them a question, and then they have to pick one of the buttons. You can have up to 3 buttons, and then based on what they pick, you can actually run some other sort of action, some logic there that actually does something based on what they're picking. So that is an option. We can input. I just give them a message, and they just type something in to answer it. Or I can just give them a message, and they just have to click OK. We're not tracking that they did anything with it. We're just reminding them. There's nice options there of just reminding people to do things. Run templates. We can actually, that's where I was setting the dollar amount. I was setting it $75 or $50, depending on what criteria I'm picking in the window. That actually is in standard as well, sorry, and run macro is in standard, yeah. Run a macro, if you have a GP macro, we can actually run that automatically. So if you set up something that you manually do all the time, we can have it do it automatically with that. And of course, we can run SQL scripts. This is pretty free form, so if you do go with enterprise and you want to be able to do this, you got to watch what you're doing, because you can update data from here. You can insert, delete, anything you want. It's just SQL scripting. So you have to be careful of what you're actually doing in here, because you want to make sure you're still keeping your data valid from within the confines of what GP sees as valid. Because if you're updating something to, say it's a number field, and you update it with a numeric or an A or something in there, it might store it in the table based on how the table's set up. But if GP is expecting all numbers, GP is going to error because it doesn't know what to do with that A that's in that record. So you got to be careful as to what you're doing here. Actually, still follows the accounting principles first, and then what GP would expect for the logic to happen as far as data. But you can do that. And then, of course, run Dynamics GP script. That's where I can enter any sort of dexterity scripting, where I was setting my next numeric value. I was opening windows, that type of thing. And here is where we can actually create GP transactions. So I can say, hey, based on the data I have in this window, create a receivables transaction. So maybe I have a dollar amount on that window. I can pass that through. This is actually saying, okay, on the receivables transaction, here's all the fields we have that we can populate from Extender. And it's going to set up some of them by default. You know, we're not going to put in the salesperson ID, any of that kind of stuff. If you want something to go in there, you can set it. So I could set it to be a constant salesperson ID. It's always going to be Aaron. I'm going to do that. But the ones with exclamation points are saying, you have to tell me this information. I can't create the transaction without this information. So customer number, it says it can be a constant. I can pull it from a field on my window, which I don't have any on this window to actually pull it from, or I can create a calculation that does it. So I can enter a constant customer, so it's going to be Adam. So now every time I create a sales transaction, it's going to create salesperson Aaron, the customer of Adam, and then the batch number. How do I want it to create that? Now this you have to watch because my batch numbers are automatically being created, but this expects one. So you kind of have to watch what are you passing here versus what are you doing elsewhere as well to make sure that happens properly. But this will actually then create the batch with the transaction in it and be waiting there for as a receivables transaction for you to post or do whatever you need to do with it. So you can do that from when it's in here. And then we have the run another action here. Set up an action once. Why make you set up it again? You say, okay, run this other action. Maybe you're doing it on a different field though. So on field A, B, or C, I want to run an action. We aren't going to make you set it up 3 times. You set it up on A, and then on B and C, you just pick that action again, so you don't have to go through all the setup you maybe have done on that. And of course, you can put conditions on your actions. Only fire if the customer ID is this, or only run if it's over $100, something like that. So that is all the different actions we can do. Hopefully that gets you thinking of, hey, can I make it do this that I go through 5 steps to do? Can it maybe do those 4 of the steps for me? I still might have to click a button, but can it do the last 4 steps for me? Something like that. The theory behind all of this is let's make Extender as easy as we can and have it do as much as we can for you so that you as the end user don't have to be opening 5 different windows to enter the same values in, stuff like that. Let's move our data back and forth and have Extender do it for us. And it's not just something that can do with Extender data, it can do it to your GP windows. I was setting batch IDs and next numbers and those kinds of things on GP windows. It had nothing to do with any Extender data. It was just strictly something I'm doing to a GP window. So when you're looking at Extender, remember it can store anything that I might be already storing in Excel, or we might just have a Word doc that we just keep entering into. We can store all of that in Extender and make it more user-friendly, make it something we can actually do something with the data with, and then it's in an application that your end users are familiar with, and you aren't having to manage 2 different sets of data. This is all stored within my SQL Server databases for GP, so I make a backup of this. It backs up my Extender data. I don't have to back up separate Excel docs, anything like that. So it kind of brings all of that data into one location, and then it allows me to do all the little things that I say, I wish GP would just do this. I wish GP would just do that. With Extender, we can bring all of those wishes and make them happen.